Welcome back to Solomon's Porch Podcast with your host, Jason.
And Shawn.
And we are here with another episode of the show for you. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether it's via podcast, YouTube. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Today, we're going to be doing as you probably would have guessed if you're familiar with the show at all, we're going to be doing a Batman review, the Batman review. And I'm not saying our review is the review, but we are reviewing the Batman. And that's not to say that Robert Pattinson is the Batman, but the movie's titled The Batman. So we're going to be reviewing the Batman, okay? As you can tell from our studio setup today, we're Batmaned out. Got my shirt on. I got my hat on. Shawn, what you got on?
I am Batman.
You should have wore the mask.
Yeah?
You should have wore the mask.
Are you saying that this is so ugly that you have to cover it up?
You should have wore the mask, my friend. Okay, anyway, so before we jump into the review, we do want to thank our sponsor for the Solomon's Porch podcast, Aaron Simpkins, TrueStrengthApparel.com. Make sure you go check out TrueStrengthApparel.com for all of your needs for apparel. So, bypassing everything else that's happened in the past 2 weeks, we're going to jump right into this review because it's the most important thing at the moment. So, Shawn and I had the honor of being able to go see it yesterday.
Yep.
So I didn't want too many spoilers to be popping up from all over the place. So we decided, let's go opening day. When's the last time we went to a movie opening day?
Endgame?
Endgame? That's a while.
Yeah.
So, man. So Shawn loves to do the good, the bad, and the ugly on our reviews. What do you have for us today, Shawn?
Well, I think, there is no bad or ugly, in my opinion. So it's more like the good, the awesome, and maybe the meh.
Okay.
So, and meh is maybe even kind of questionable. So.
All right. Well, if you're not familiar, there is a new Batman film called The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson as The Batman. Most people know him from the Twilight series. When the news first broke, a lot of people were like, oh, man, this is not going to be good. They made a mistake, this, that, and the other. But if you haven't seen any of his indie films that he made after Twilight, then all you have is that of him. So we have Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle, who did a phenomenal job.
Oh, absolutely.
As Catwoman. Paul Dano as Riddler, which, again, I feel like he did a fantastic job. If you didn't know who Penguin was, it's Colin Farrell. Farrell. He actually played, what's the name of the villain from Daredevil? He's a new crossover. Bullseye from the Ben Affleck Daredevil.
Right.
He was in that among many other movies, but I thought it was another crossover that. I think this is his first crossover to DC.
I think so.
From Marvel. Jeffrey Wright as James Gordon, and spoilery, everybody. Barry Keoghan as Joker. So if you're not familiar, he was in Eternals. He was the guy that could control everybody's minds and force them to do stuff. We also have Andy Serkis as Alfred Pennyworth. Great job. And then Ton Turturro, is that how you pronounce it? As Carmine Falcone. These are kind of the main cast of the film, aside from Joker, who was at the very end of the film. Yeah. But anyway, man, let's jump into our official thoughts.
So I think just an overall, hands down, best DC movie now.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of the Snyder Cut, and I still love the Snyder Cut solely for different reasons, though. I mean, these two movies exist in two different arenas, and so if you were to take, part of what I love, and this is in my awesome, is that this is not a DCU related movie.
Right.
So that means that it can live on its own, with its own merits, with its own creativity, outside of everything else. And to me, that's what's probably one of the more beautiful things about this film.
Yeah.
The fact that they're not hindered by any of those things is definitely shows within this film. I think that, and it's part of the reason why, to me, it becomes my favorite. So if Snyder Cut could have been able to be a standalone, then I think that it would probably still be a good challenge. Love the artistry of Snyder Cut, and that's still part of the reason why it's at my second at this point. But the Batman definitely edges it out. It still has some flaws to it, but yeah, definitely well worth seeing. In fact, I'm really seriously thinking about going back and seeing it again in the theater, just because there's stuff you miss.
Yeah, there is. There's always stuff you miss.
Yeah. So, did you want to go into your overall, and then we'll get into some breakdown stuff?
Yeah, man. So, so one thing you got to understand going into this film, this is not a action blockbuster, everything blows up the whole movie type of a film. There is some of that. You do have some fire and some explosions and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
don't think superhero.
Right. This is a detective film starring Batman as the main detective. You still get Batman. You get, Alfred Pennyworth. There's not as much Pennyworth as I thought there would be. You get more Pennyworth in the Chris Nolan, the Dark Knight series. You get more Pennyworth in that than probably any other Batman film. But overall, that's kind of my overall. It is, one of the longest superhero films that exist.
Right.
Runtime, not just credits. There is a post-credit scene that we didn't stay to see because we had to hurry up and get home to Bible study. But there is a post-credit scene, and essentially, if I'm not mistaken, it is someone going to the Riddler's website that he created, and then it says goodbye with a question mark, essentially saying they're going to be back. This isn't the end of, or at least the Riddler. It's not the end of the Riddler. So, but yeah, I think Robert Pattinson, I think he did a good job as the Batman.
So in my meh list of things, part of what I loved about it, so you did say that it was more of a detective, and it is more detective. I felt like it did come up a little bit short in terms of the detective side of things. I felt like that they could have made him a little bit more. Now, of course, I'm a Sherlock Holmes fan, so I always want more, right? The more you can make him like Sherlock, the better, right? I say. But definitely was for more of that instead of just Big Bad Bruiser kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with Big Bad Bruiser Batman, but this is only his second year as Batman. And so that was part of my concern about the casting of Pattinson, was that it's like, guy's scrawny. I mean, look, Batman's not a scrawny little kid kind of thing. He is bulked out a little bit, but I'm okay with that, with especially it only being his second year.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be like super fit for a second year Batman. How are they going to be able to continue on with it if they're not going to bulk him up? I think emphasizing the detective part of things is probably the best way to go with it. The fact that he is a little bit on the smaller side of things also means that his suit should allow him, and does seem to allow him, a lot more flexibility too.
Yeah.
So we can see far more creative fighting styles rather than just a bruiser Batman kind of fighting style. So the meh in there was sort of Pattinson. He does well. Does he totally conform to my preconceived notions of who Bruce Wayne is? No, but that's also okay. I like being challenged about those sorts of things, and I love being able to reinvent characters with a new idea. And so that's why I say it's sort of a meh, but is it meh? It's kind of in between.
Well, I think the good thing about this being in its own universe, the first film in this universe, whether or not they're going to create other ones, I don't know. It is its own universe though, because they're doing a Gotham show based off of it. They're doing an Arkham show based off of the same universe.
Right.
So they are expanding it on HBO Max next 2 or 3 years. But I just love the fact that, Matt Reeves could do whatever he wanted to do and start with the Batman.
Sure.
Because in the current DCEU, they started with Superman. And they didn't bring in Batman till Justice League.
Right.
And it was not a great Justice League movie. So, you had that issue there where he had to feed into the existing world.
Well, and I mean I get where at least from there we've had a lot of Batman, even though we've had a lot of Superman too, but more recently we've had more Batman.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the 3 hours. The 3 hours definitely doesn't bother me. I appreciate that they went with whatever it was that they felt like that they kind of needed. We have information that says that there's up to 4 hours of footage.
Can we get a Reeves cut?
I mean, I'm excited about that. I'd love to see all of that. The only criticism I have about the 3 hour time length is that some of the character development was a little bit on the thin side. So where things maybe drug on just a little bit, they could have either cut it out, sped it up, and developed, say, the Penguin.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that he's not our main nemesis in this movie. The Riddler is. But he still played a good enough amount of role in all of this that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more development in his character.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's fair.
One of my favorite Gotham characters is Bullock.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Logue, and I don't know whether it's just through writing or his acting or a combination thereof, makes Bullock someone that you want to like. So I'm kind of a fan. But there's no Bullock.
Yeah.
So that definitely made my meh list. The last little nitpicky thing, and I feel like that these are kind of nitpicky things, is that so we get this sort of like this is what I'm about to start with is actually part of the good is that or more like the awesome was that this movie is more based in like a more realistic kind of Batman. Like this really could be somebody that could exist today, because sometimes you get Batman and it's like, dude, really, car like that with the splits apart and the motorcycle what? This was a lot more realistic. So in that vein, having a rocket on the car was probably the only thing that maybe went a little too far for me. Some of the gadgetry was, at least doable enough, I feel like. And all the rest of his tech seemed like it was doable enough. But turning your car into a rocket car. Now, I will say this, though. It was somewhat comedic, but then it was also kind of realistic. Is the first time that we see the Batmobile, he goes to crank it up, right? And it's all lit up, and everybody's like, oh, dude, this is going to be bad.
Yeah.
Put. And it's like, what? It stalls?
That's the only comedic aspect to the movie. Did you notice that? That was the only part of the movie where it was comical.
I felt like there was one other thing, but I don't recall.
Oh! The other part was never Penguin was stuck in the restraints, and he's like, "Hey, well, Penguin."
And he's waddling.
Honestly, in general, he was kind of the comedic relief of the film if they had one.
Yeah, which is okay, when you consider the Penguin.
Because he was like, I'm still here. I'm here, right?
Right, yeah.
And then he's hopping away. He's got the restraints on. And
it's almost more like a waddle to me. So
like
it
a
felt,
penguin.
Yeah, exactly. So it felt more
I
like
didn't
Penguin.
realize that.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, so those are my only mess. I don't know if you kind of broke down
there were a couple
ideas.
of parts of the movie that seemed kind of slow.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like the fact that they did the slow walkthrough, like with Batman, like the real slow, gradual coming to the scene, kind of mysterious. But they did it so many times, like later on in the film, it was just like, I don't know if they need to do it every time they bring him into a new scene almost.
Well, like anytime that he had interactions with like the police, they'd question him and stuff, or say crap to him, and he was just like stone cold faced, walking right through it all, and it's like somebody would ask, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here," and he'd just like stare at him, and it was like, "Oh, okay, all right, I'll back down now."
And that could have been him trying to figure out how he's supposed to engage with the police. So
Fair.
again, it's year 2.
Yeah,
Year 2.
but I also like the intimidation aspect, and intimidation or fear is a major element within this,
Yeah.
or a theme within this movie. So
Vengeance.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that's the only meh probably. I did see some other mehs that I saw were some bad things. I saw people kind of critiquing maybe later on the Penguin when he unmasked and he's just this young kind of kid almost, and they were like, yeah, there was absolutely nothing intimidating about him at that point. Like, it was much more intimidating when he was all masked up and had his voice changed.
you're talking about Riddler.
Riddler, yeah. So I will say with Batman, and I guess this would be transitioning from bad to good for me, or meh to good, is I wasn't sure if Robert Pattinson was trying to do his own variation of Christian Bale's Batman voice without the lisp.
Right.
But like you could hear he was trying to do that
Gravelly.
Yeah, that gravelly voice. And I don't know if we never really saw Ben Affleck do that per se.
I think he did a little.
Like, he was mostly around Justice League or villains whenever he was Batman.
Yeah.
So, he was with Commissioner Gordon one time, but even then he really didn't do it. He had to automate that voice box in the suit in Batman vs. Superman. But aside from that, though, I felt like his portrayal of Batman, it seemed a little, like you said, like almost stone cold. Not Stone Cold Steve Austin, but Stone Cold.
Right.
And you don't really get any emotion from him a whole lot. There is a scene where he's kind of teary-eyed at one point, or I think he was teary-eyed. I felt like it was teary-eyed. And I think it was I can't remember, but either way.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit on the I guess emotionless side of things, and again, this is year 2 of Batman, so we can see him develop more. You can get more character in that way. In that, what I loved about it was that it didn't harp on origin story. We still got references, we still got comments about it, because obviously the death of his parents is instrumental to who he is, but they didn't really harp on it, which I thought was great, because we don't need more of it. You know what I'm saying? To be able to say that, if somebody brand new walks into it, they gave enough information. So, if you've never seen anything about Batman, you don't know anything about Batman, you could still walk in and watch this movie and enjoy it. So, yeah, that to me was definitely one of the elements that I have down for good. Pattinson, he did a good job, but I would leave it at good at this point. I feel like that in general, because of the the character development aspect of things, we, by a second or third movie, they have room to grow. Maybe even within the 4-hour cut, we've got enough room to grow. I don't know, but that's the only thing is that Pattinson did a good job with what there was. Penguin was good, but not spectacular. Again, I think it's due to a lack of character development. I liked that we get an African American Gordon. It's not one of those characters that it's essential. It's kind of like a Nick Fury. It's not essential that they have to be a specific race. Now, if Black Panther were a white dude, okay, we got issues.
Or Shang-Chi.
Yeah. Then we got issues.
I do think we need to make Captain Marvel black again. So.
I agree. But anyway, but I love the fact that they kept the mustache. Because that is iconic. I saw one interview, and they were saying, the mustache is kind of the cowl, the Batman cowl for Gordon.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's the one iconic thing. If you were to do an outline of Gordon, and you had no facial features, but you had that mustache and glasses, boom, that's it. It's done. We know who this is. You know, so I thought that was pretty awesome.
Which is why at the end of Gotham, Gordon had a mustache.
Yeah. So Alfred, I mean,
Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis is just phenomenal. Anyway, I don't know that
is.
I've seen anything that Andy Serkis hasn't just been spectacular with. Maybe movies overall weren't that great, but his performances were always, right up there. And we didn't get a whole lot of them, like you said. Again, I think also still character development, but at the same time, what there was of them was excellent. I liked the Bat-Cat romance being kept to a minimum.
Yeah.
The fact that they could do anything in the world that they wanted to with this film meant that we could get Bruce Wayne, the whole Black Series controversy. Right. So we could have had straight up nudity in this. We could have had a full blown sex scene between the Bat and the Cat.
Which the way DC has been going with HBO Max and everything else they've been doing, that seemed very likely.
It very easily could have gone that route.
Yeah.
So the fact that they kept the romance to a minimum, and the fact that again, we understand this is only second year Batman, right? So they should not have a full-blown, all-out romance or intimate situation just yet.
But they did hold true to her being bisexual.
Yeah.
So they held true to that.
Yeah, and it was still only sort of, I wouldn't say that it was implied necessarily, but it also didn't come out and just say it either, because she calls the girl babe.
She calls baby.
Yeah.
Like the very first scene with her in it, she's like, "Hey, baby, I'll be home soon." And you got that very intimate, like, moment. She's living with her. They're face to face. They don't kiss.
Yeah.
She only kisses Bruce Wayne or Batman.
Right.
But it's still very, to me, you'd have to.
It's not explicit.
It's not very explicit, no.
And I think that's my point, is that it's not explicit. So, yes, we understand that that's where they're going with it. But I also appreciated that it wasn't like overtly explicit either, because they totally could have had them do a scene as well, and again, DC could have easily gone that route. So yeah. I appreciate those aspects. Did you have any other goods, or move on to your awesomes?
Well, with goods, I will say that, I do like the fact that they teased Joker. Whether or not he's supposed to be full-blown Joker or just the intro to Joker has not been super explicit. Everybody knows him as the Joker. Like, it's kind of given. But how far along in his journey he is, we really don't know.
Right.
In the deleted scenes, there was a scene where Batman and Joker are kind of going back and forth a little bit, showing that they've had some experience with one another. Mm-hmm. Maybe Batman got him locked up. We don't know. I do like
because
that,
of course
though.
He's currently in Arkham right now.
Yeah. So I did like that component. I think I'm trying to think of things that aren't. The car was just good for me. Yeah. Like you said, it wasn't like super Tumbler and militaristic and, like jumped into a plane and flew around. On the edge of good and meh would be him adjusting the suit to be able to jump off the building and soar a little bit. To me, that was like, it looked kind of weird, but I know why they did it. I understand it.
Well, but that's also real life stuff, though.
It is.
I mean, people do the I forgot what it's called. So the gliding.
Yeah. I've seen it.
But yeah, but
and it did seem like it was very, like you said, like many have said, is it looked like exactly something a billionaire would do for himself if he had all that money.
Sure.
Like, I think the only other meh thing, or I don't know, is that he's not this. He's not like. They don't show a lot of his intelligence aside from solving the riddles on the spot.
Right.
So you don't get a lot of that.
And that was my complaint about the detective aspect of things. It didn't seem like it.
I was maneuvering
quite
stuff when you said that. Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So anyway, everything else I would categorize in my office awesome.
Okay.
So yeah, open it up, man.
Well, so the fact that it's not grounded, or that it is more grounded in a more realistic kind of attitude, I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things that draws me into like sort of Daredevil, but definitely the Punisher, is that these things are a little more realistic. Obviously, not totally.
Punisher.
Yeah.
Probably.
Obviously, not totally. But there are far more reasonably real life associated kind of things that could be taking place. So, the fact that it wasn't too gadgety, I mean, his Batman logo being gadget was cool.
And it was practical.
It was super practical. Yeah. He carried like a gear pouch off of one thigh.
Yeah.
So it was a little bulky looking, but at the same time, very realistic, because that's what anybody in a tactical kind of outfit would actually have. So it and that's probably where he probably kept like his gliding parts and pieces.
Yeah.
So, it would have been totally realistic. I love that when he was scoping out things, he was still sort of Bruce Wayne, hoodie, baseball cap, riding on a motorcycle through town, and then he would change it into his Batman outfit.
Yeah.
To me, that it felt relatable like that way.
And he had it in a backpack.
Yeah. So it felt totally relatable. The motorcycle felt relatable. Later on he gets more of a bat cycle at the end of the movie. But even then it's still more themed motorcycle as opposed to an unrealistic big fat tired thing from the Tumbler. So I love that. I love that it was gritty feeling. One of the things that I think that a Star Wars fan, an OG Star Wars fan, that I appreciate was, the fact that we had models and puppets, but then everything was dirty. So you're talking about A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Everything was used, and this felt that way. His mask, albeit fairly well refined, still had some flaws to it, whether that was because of fights or just in construction, a slip of the knife or something.
You see that at the very end of the film. Yeah, they get that close up on it.
Yeah. And so it feels. It again helps with that grounding in reality, I think. Zoe's Catwoman mask is basically just a slightly altered toboggan.
Yeah.
The eye hole cut out through it, across it is very ragged, but then the ears are kind of stitched up a little bit. I appreciate that. I really do. Again, this is the beginning of them, so they're not necessarily going to have all the other parts and pieces totally into it.
And she didn't have like the whip like Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah,
she had something else that she used in the way of a whip.
Right.
And she didn't have like claws. She had long fingernails that were glued on.
Yeah.
So a lot of, again, practical things that
felt real.
People could do.
Yeah. I think what's cool is that, especially if you're thinking about this from like a Comic-Con kind of perspective, is that you then feel more creative about being able to do your own interpretation of these characters. So if you want to cosplay as Catwoman, you don't have to look like one of the previous Catwomans. Go somewhere else with it, and this helps to encourage that and I think show that. The reinvention of the Riddler is definitely one of my favorite parts. To me, that was awesome. We lose some of that, like, this is a total baddie when he's unmasked, because he looks so young. I mean, he looks like a little boy almost, and so you kind of go, eh. But at the same time, the dementedness that he portrays and pulls out is phenomenal. I would have told you that the best Riddler was in Gotham. I think
Up to this point, yeah.
I think right now there's a really strong tie for it. So, but yeah, so the reinvention, and as I said it before, fact that it is not affiliated with DCU is the best part of this film. They can do with it whatever they want to, even like reinventing the Joker. So he doesn't have to be what we think he normally is. Whatever preconceived notions that we have of the Joker, be prepared that it's not going to be that way for you.
As long as he's not Jared Leto's Joker, I don't care what else he is.
I feel you.
That's my least favorite Joker.
I feel you.
So I think not to repeat everything that you just said, but I do love the fact that they took the time to tell the story and it didn't feel like wasted time. I can appreciate the usage of those almost 3 hours of the film.
Right.
Were there some slow spots? Yes. Mainly because it wasn't exploding buildings every 20 minutes or so.
Right.
I love the fact that it's Detective Batman that he's investigating and all of those things. I love the fact that they didn't have to rehash the origin story, the parents being killed.
Yeah.
They didn't rehash all of that. The cats being with Selena Kyle, like it was very simple. Like I take in strays.
Yeah.
Tying that into Batman and him being an orphan. And so all of those things, like the way they wrote the movie was great. It was great writing, great story collecting. The Riddler at the end, the motivation behind what he did, I didn't fully buy into that. I bought into the Riddler.
Right.
Just not his motivation. So that was like, I mean, I don't know. I did love the fact that Batman thought he was outed and everybody thought he was outed for a second there.
Awesome, right?
And then it was like, oh, no, you don't. Oh, okay, never mind. I'm still.
Or is he?
Yeah, exactly.
I still feel like that there's that twinge in there where like the Riddler, he knows that he knows, and he's letting Batman think that he knows, but then letting Batman think that he doesn't know, but he really knows, so that way they can keep playing the game.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the mind twisting in this was awesome.
Yeah, so I did really like that. So the last thing I want to say is, or for us to do is, what are your hopes for the sequel? They've already said it's going to be a trilogy at least. At this point, with the ending of this film, what are you hoping for in a trilogy? Oh, another one. Another awesome thing, even though it doesn't matter at this point because he's a young Batman, they mentioned Bloodhaven.
Right.
Which is Nightwing, Dick Grayson, spoiler, but or teaser. So anyway.
So we do actually get the appearance of the actor from Titans.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Robin. Yeah.
Yeah. So
or Tim Drake.
Tim Drake. So I would love to see that twist around. So he's actually part of a gang in the Batman, and so I'd love to see him come around from that and get taken in by the Batman and raised up as a Robin. I think that's probably my number one. I know everybody really wants Joker, and I feel like we're definitely going to get the Joker. Yeah. It's just it's always so hard. It's a double-edged sword of saying, are you going to give me something so new and so unique and so creative that I'm going to love it because it is that, and it doesn't matter what else has been done, or are you going to give me Jared Leto again? I see Jared Leto's place in all of it. I do. I get it. But definitely not my favorite. And if you're going to recreate, you're going to reinvent, that wasn't the best way to go after Heath Ledger, unless what you really wanted to do was set the bar low so that way you can then blow us away later.
Yeah.
Then success there. Again, Gotham gave us a far better Joker than anything else since then. So I feel like if we can kind of go more that route, then I'll be far more okay with saying, yeah, I definitely want to see Joker in subsequent films. But Tim Drake, for sure.
Yeah, and Tim Drake or Dick Grayson, whoever he may possibly
whoever.
become to be.
Yeah.
Because maybe this character was from Bloodhaven. Maybe it is Dick Grayson. His parents died. He got involved in this gang. And I had actually, so it was one thing that we had mentioned, or I had mentioned on our way back from the film, is like, I'd love to see, so the thing about Court of the Owls, right? One of my favorite Batman stories of all time. So you had the character in there that was a friend of his who ended up becoming the Talon for the Court of Owls. And then later on in the Batman storyline, not necessarily that one, but the Court of Owls tries to get Dick Grayson to become the Talon.
Right.
What I would love to see is if they did Court of Owls, maybe Dick Grayson is the Talon already, and then Batman pulls him out of that in a similar way in which you said this young Tim Drake actor character may be pulled back. So I'd love to see that switch up. I think that'd be cool. Especially being that...
I think you'd feel rushed within 3 films, though. That's my only real problem with it, is that so we just barely got him now, and so that means that he would have to be Talon in the second film to be Robin by the third film.
Right.
And that's my only real issue with it, because I totally love Court of Owls. And I would love to see them do thematically something like that within the subsequent films,
right?
But it not be specifically Court of Owls. We got a little bit of Hush in this film.
Yeah.
And there's I forget the other series where Riddler basically takes over Gotham in a post-apocalyptic kind of setting.
There's also Long Halloween in it.
Yeah. So I mean, and I think that's part of the beauty of this film is that it is so cross all of Batman and pulls it all in and kind of gives you one new storyline that obviously feels completely like the comics. So
I told my wife, I said, this might be a Batman movie you like.
Yeah.
She might like it.
Huh. Okay.
So I'm really hoping she does. I mean, she's not going to go to the theaters to see it.
Right.
But I'm hoping whenever I buy it on digital, then buy it on Blu-ray separately. So I can watch it earlier. I'm a sucker for that, man. They release it on digital like a month before they put it on Blu-ray. I'm buying it.
Well, my daughter loved the film. She's still trying to process. I asked her for her specific thoughts, and the problem is that you and I, we broke it down like real fast right after the film, and she was just like yes, agree.
She ain't had time to do her own processing.
Yeah. So, but she totally loved it. She definitely loves the Selena Kyle character. Zoe Kravitz. What's the film that she did with High Fidelity? She did the remake on High Fidelity. That's when I first saw her, and I was like, wow, she's definitely got some range here. And so to see her as Selena Kyle was cool, to be able to do something a little bit different, but then still get some of that range out of her too. It was just really awesome. I think the casting was, and at least in that regards, was definitely spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. So
anyway.
out of 5 stars, what do you give it?
5.
5 all the way?
Well, the thing is that every film's going to have a little something that you're not totally down with. So with that in mind, it otherwise it pegged everything else. Am I totally? I don't buy movies anymore so much, and I definitely don't buy them just because. But this is definitely in that category that I've got to own this film when it comes out.
Okay.
So if it meets that criteria at this point in time, that's a 5.
I'd give it a 4.6. 4.6.
That's fair. That's fair.
I guess I'm just used to the more explosive type stuff. So seeing something in that range, some creativity in that range, I would have appreciated a little bit more. And but other than that, though, I think everything else was kind of on point. So added some explosives to the detective that don't take away from the detective work at all.
Add more detective work.
I love that. So anyway, so Shawn gives it a 5 out of 5. I give it a 4.6 out of 5. Let me know your ratings, everybody. What did you think about this film? What do you want to see for the sequel? What do you want to see for the sequel? Remember, we got so much more Batman coming up, though. You got Michael Keaton coming back. You still got Ben Affleck as Batman a little bit. We got Robert Pattinson. And then I think that's it for right now. We still got Gotham, where Bruce Wayne was brought back to life. So, not Gotham, Titans.
Titans.
So, yeah, man, we'll see y'all soon. Make sure you stay tuned.